Blog Talk Radio.
We are now about to present the main attraction of our world-famous show.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for choosing King Jordan Radio for Thursday, October 16th, 2014, and welcome to First Time Ever, where we are scheduled to have Tom Mesereau and Joey Jackson. However, Joey Jackson right now has some plane delay issues. Hopefully he will call in. For the meantime, let me introduce guest number one. He is out of Los Angeles. He acquitted Michael Jackson from A to Z in 2005. He's a criminal defense attorney, and he's back here on King Jordan Radio. Big welcome to Tom Mesereau. Good evening, Tom. How are you?
Hi, Jordan. I'm doing very well. Thanks for inviting me again. Always enjoy it.
Okay. Before we get to Joe, wait for Joey. As I said, he has some delay problems with his travels. But I wanted to touch on some of the Michael Jackson stuff before Joey gets here, and then we can sort of go backwards from the original plan. So what I want to do first is go out to the lines, and let's take it from there. When I say your area code, just tell me your name and where you're calling from, and then you can continue. Let's go out to 443. Please state your name and where you're calling from. And you're on the phone with Tom Mesereau.
Deborah from Maryland.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Oh, it's so nice to speak with you.
Same here. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you so much for all the efforts that you have put with Michael. It has really made me proud.
Sir, don't mean to interrupt you. Joey Jackson just texted me. He will be calling in 2 minutes. So we can proceed. And you can go ahead with your question, dear.
Okay, Mr. Mesereau, listen to your last, when you were on the show last, and you did say that you would consider helping the fans and defending Michael's name in these charges against him?
Well, what I said was this. I think the lawyers who are representing him are somewhat tarnished because Howard Weitzman, the lead lawyer, settled the Chandler case in 1993 where Michael paid, allegedly close to $20 million to settle that case. And in my opinion, that was the worst settlement in American legal history. And, Weitzman signed the settlement agreement. He appeared at a press conference announcing it. And I didn't think it was really helpful to have him defending, Michael's reputation when I think that settlement hurt Michael's reputation. I think it set in motion a lot of events that ended up really hurting Michael. So what I said was that I would certainly consider it if asked. I have never been asked, but I doubt whether it would work because I would not join forces with Weitzman. I would not report to people that I think, made poor judgment when it comes to Michael, and I would require complete independence. Susan, you and I would have to be in charge. We would have to pick who the lawyers were, and there would have to be an understanding we're not going to pay money and settle it, and they'll never agree to that because I think Branca and Weitzman, if they can't get the case thrown out, and they're trying to get it thrown out, by the way, there's what is called a motion for summary judgment that's pending. They're trying to say to the judge, throw it out, it was filed way too late, and I hope they win that. But if they don't, I doubt whether they would want to relinquish control or authority to me. And unless they did, I'm not going to go through some of the politics and the nonsense that have characterized, Michael Jackson's legal battles, his whole career, and would end up characterizing his legal battles even after he's passed away. So, yes, I would relish the thought to take it with charges and put them where they belong, but I doubt whether that will happen because I don't think the people in charge will want to relinquish any control.
I agree with you so much, and it just pains me to hear that. I agree with everything that you just said. But I'm going to keep trying. So hopefully we, the fans, can rally together, and it's possible. We can just try.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate your support and your allegiance to Michael Jackson, who was a great person.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Nice talking to you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now it is, for the first time ever, let's bring on the line with us, for the first time ever, he is a CNN/HLN legal analyst. He also works out of New York, my hometown, and he joins us on King Jordan Radio. His name is Joey Jackson. Good evening, Joey. You're on the phone with Tom Mesereau and me, King Jordan. How are you?
It's a pleasure and a privilege. I'm doing great. Thanks for the great introduction. Listen, how you know that you might be doing a little something in this world is you get to be on the radio with Tom Mesereau and King Jordan at the same time. What am I doing right? Tell me. Tom,
Joey,
how do I get to be on the radio with Tom Mesereau and Joey Jackson? That's the question.
This is Tom Mesereau. It's a real honor to be with Joey Jackson, a great lawyer and the greatest legal analyst on television. I really mean that.
Listen, Tom, I got to tell you, I am gratefully appreciative of that, and you are such an inspiration, I have to say. So listen, King, before we get into the meat and potatoes, I got to at least say a few words to Tom Mesereau. I mean, you've been practicing law for an awful long time, and I think, for a lot of lawyers who are looking to come in and do trial advocacy and trial work, you really set the standard, and what a fine example, in terms of taking over a court case, a high-profile case, being no nonsense, representing your client, doing it with dignity, getting great results for him, and it's a privilege to be on with you. Tom Mesereau in the
thank
house.
you very much.
Yeah, baby.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Tom, you did tell me that you, out of nowhere, one day we were talking, and you told me, who's that Joey Jackson guy? He's great. Is that correct?
Well, that's absolutely correct. And what Joey brings is a keen mind when it comes to the law and a lot of experience behind him trying very difficult cases. He brings practical experience, he brings insight, he brings wisdom, and he knows how to express it in a way that really makes sense. He's a terrific legal analyst and a great lawyer. And I wish him the best success, and I always enjoy watching him and listening to him. I learn from him every time he opens his mouth.
That's so sweet, Tom. Listen, King, I want you to save this tape. I need you to get me a copy so I can promo it everywhere. Words of Tom Mesereau to me. Are you kidding? You know where this is going to get me? But it really is a pleasure. I'm glad to be on.
Okay, I want to start with the Jody Arias retrial of the penalty phase. Joey, I want to go to you. Can you give us the latest and give us some commentary about it?
Sure. It was interesting because today what we did, King, is we did a segment on, things that were overheard in terms of what the jury was saying. And it was, some of the comments were pretty comical from some potential jurors because, as you know, the short answer is that they're in jury selection because they're trying to find a neutral jury, an impartial jury, one that can sit in judgment of Jody Arias. And so obviously as they go through that process, one of the critical questions is, have you heard about the case before? Now, that in and of itself, King, is not what we call outcome determinative, meaning it doesn't determine the outcome of whether you can sit, but certainly if you say you have, now the attorneys are going to press you on, well, what do you know about it? Do you have one favor one side? Do you favor the other? How closely did you follow it? Did you hear all the testimony? So unfortunately, we can't get cameras in the courtroom for the retrial, but, there could be, media personnel in there, and they're tweeting out. And so it's very interesting, some of the things that are overheard in the courtroom in terms of what the potential jurors are saying, in addition to what they're saying to the attorneys. For example, one juror just came out and said, something to the effect of, if ever there was a death penalty case of someone who deserved the death penalty, it would be her. Now, while that might be Prosecutor Juan Martinez's ideal juror, it certainly would not be Kurt Nurmi nor Jennifer Wilmot. But there were comments to that effect. There were also some comments regarding people who say they haven't heard it. You have to heard about the case. You have to question whether or not, those jurors are being completely candid, particularly if you're in the Arizona area. I don't know how, you would not have heard it. But we went through a litany of various things that jurors have said. And hopefully they'll be able to get, a jury in place, and they are looking for about 6 or 7 alternates. Of course, there'll be 12 jurors who sit in judgment. And just to be clear, so that the listeners understand, they're not retrying, factually the guilt, nor are they retrying what they call an aggravating circumstance, which would justify the death penalty. That is, that she engaged in, extremely cruel behavior. They're simply deciding, that is the jury that they impanel, whether or not the death penalty should apply to her. But in doing that, of course, they have to go into, that is the attorneys, prosecution, and defense, some of the underlying facts in the case and the issues and what happened, so that the new jury gets a flavor of what's going to happen. But, we suspect that within the next 2 weeks, we'll be hearing a lot about the case. But unfortunately, it won't be on tape, or if it will be on tape, because, of course, it'll be taped, the judge is not allowing it until after the trial is over. So a lot more to come on Jodi Arias. Stay tuned, to say the least.
Joey, is it true that she's still representing herself?
I'll tell you what happened. Initially, she was attempting to represent herself, and in fact, the judge let her, because there's certainly case law that supports the notion that if a client wants to represent themselves and they are making an intelligent, voluntary, and knowing, waiver to the court that they don't want counsel, that they should be permitted to do it. But it turned out that was just a ploy, because while the Judge Sherry Stevens initially granted the motion of Jodi Arias to represent herself, Jodi, a couple of weeks later, said, well, I'll tell you what, Judge, I won't represent myself if you give me a lawyer other than Kurt Nurmi. And the judge, of course, said, you don't get to pick and choose who your lawyers are. We're going to give you someone who's competent and responsible. We deem him to be that, and therefore he's staying on your case. And plus, it would prejudice you based upon his knowledge of the case and having been there from day one if we took him off. So she then withdrew her request, and therefore she will not be representing herself. Kurt Nurmi and Jennifer Wilmot are still serving as her counsel. To make a long story short, then, it appeared as though that was simply a ploy to get him, Kurt Nurmi, off the case. It didn't work. He's remaining on the case, and she's represented by counsel, because otherwise it would be a circus.
Well, this was a very tough case to defend, and I thought the lawyers did an excellent job last time. I really do. They were criticized, left and right by all sorts of people, but when you really looked at the facts of that case, the absolute brutality of the murder of an innocent young man who really doesn't look like a bad guy at all, and the way she, reportedly tried to plan it and then cover it up, and some of the comments she had made to various people, I think they did an excellent job not getting the death penalty. I really do.
The problem that I had with them, Tom, I didn't have problems with the attorneys as much as I did with the client. There were many things that she gave the indication of on the stand that were not corroborated. And so, for example, instances, and it's always a tough line, and obviously the listeners need to be aware, between, we as attorneys trying to blame the victim and at the same time trying to get our clients off by giving them some understanding of who the victim was and what, responsibility they may have had for what happened to them. But, when she gets on the stand, some of the things out of her mouth, and it just made me wonder, for example, the abuse. I've endured abuse at his hand, and he broke my finger, and he tossed me and turned me and moved me. Oftentimes, we as attorneys, King, when we put witnesses on the stand and they say those things, there would be, for example, a recent outcry witness, there might be someone who's sued, there might be a police report, there may be something to document what you're saying. And so to the extent that she testified ad nauseum about, just picking things out of the sky, I had to question whether or not the attorneys were in charge or she was in charge. Now, clearly, the stakes are very high. We get that. And clearly her life is at issue, so you want to do all that you can do. But when she was on the stand, just talking about things, you have to wonder whether that backfired on her or not. So that was my issue with Jody.
Yeah,
amongst other issues.